The gods of Westeros keep a ledger of cruel jokes, and the cruelest of all was never written down. Picture it, a bastard of the north, raised on snow and silence, his blood half fire and half ice, standing on a black shore with a sword he never asked for. Across from him, a prince 2 centuries dead in every history you have ever heard, grinning with violet eyes and a voice like a blade drawn slow. What if the wheel had turned once more? What if Jon Snow, the boy who knew nothing, had stood upon the windy cliffs of Dragonstone and crossed steel with Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince himself? One had the honor of Eddard Stark stitched into his bones. The other had already killed more men than most lords have names for. Only one would walk away, and the realm that rose from that duel would not be the realm the singers remember. It would be darker, it would be bloodier, and before the last raven fell, even the dead would take notice. The divergence begins not on a battlefield, but in the dream. Bran Stark, rooted beneath the weirwood, reaches too deep into the river of time. The three-eyed raven had warned him, do not pull threads, you cannot weave. Bran pulls anyway. He reaches back past Robert, past the Mad King, past the Dance of Dragons, and in the reaching, something reaches back. A door opens that should have stayed shut. On Dragonstone, beneath the painted table where Aegon once carved his conquest, a pale mist rises between the cracks, and from that mist steps a man in black and red, silver hair loose to his shoulders, dark sister sheathed at his hip. Daemon Targaryen looks at his own hands, flexes them and laughs. He does not ask where he is. He does not ask when. He only asks who rules. And the terrified maester who answers him does not live to finish the sentence. Word travels faster than wisdom in Westeros. By the time the raven reaches Winterfell, the story has grown teeth. A silver prince has taken Dragonstone. He rides no dragon, for the dragons are gone, but he has taken the castle all the same, and the Velaryon descendants who tried to question him are bleeding into the salt. Sansa Stark reads the letter twice. She does not believe in ghosts. She believes in claimants. And the Targaryen claimant, risen from nowhere, is a knife pointed at every throne in the Seven Kingdoms, including the one her brother now refuses to sit. She sends for Jon. Jon is beyond the wall where he belongs, where the cold does not ask questions, but Ghost lifts his head before the rider arrives. And Jon already knows. He has been dreaming of silver hair and purple eyes for a fortnight. He thought it was his mother. It was not. In King's Landing, the news arrives differently. Tyrion Lannister turns the parchment over in his fingers as though weight might tell him truth. A Targaryen, he says to the empty chamber, and pours himself a cup that does not last the sentence. Bronn is already counting what such a man might pay for loyalty, and what he might pay to have loyalty undone. Across the table, Davos Seaworth says only one word: fire. He has seen what Targaryens do to cities. He has smelt the flesh. The small council argues until the candles gutter. Send envoys, send envies, send assassins, send nothing. In the end, they send Jon because Jon is the only man in Westeros whose name both halves of the realm still half trust, and because King Bran, staring at nothing, has already said it must be Jon. He does not say why. He never does. The journey south is short and sharp. Jon Snow rides with 20 men, half of them Northmen who do not forgive him for bending the knee to a queen who burned children, and half of them Southrons who do not forgive him for killing her. He rides in silence. He has done that before. The sea crossing to Dragonstone is grey and spitting, and as the cliffs rise from the water, black and toothed, Jon feels something stir beneath his ribs that is not courage. It is recognition. The island knows him. The stones remember the blood that made him. He hates that they do. Daemon meets him in the throne room, because of course he does. A man who died in a lake of fire centuries ago knows how to frame an entrance. He sits not upon the carved stone seat, but upon its arm, one leg crossed, dark sister across his knees. He smiles when Jon enters, and the smile is worse than any snarl. "You have the look of my brother," Daemon says. "Before you answer, know that I have killed 3 men today for lying to me about lesser things." Jon does not answer. Jon sets Longclaw's point upon the flagstones and leans on it, the way Ned used to lean on ice. "My name is Jon Snow," he says, and Daemon laughs. truly laughs and says, "No, boy, your name is the reason I'm here." The chain reaction begins before the duel is even struck. In the Vale, Robin Arryn, no longer the sickly child but still a fool, hears of the Targaryen on Dragonstone and declares for him before his council can gag him. Littlefinger is dead, but Littlefinger's students are not, and one of them, a soft-spoken steward with ink-stained fingers, sends 3 ravens within the hour. One flies to the Reach, where the Tyrells are ashes, but the Hightowers are not. And old Ormond Hightower reads the raven and sets down his wine very carefully. One flies to Dorne, where a new prince who does not love King Bran calculates how many spears he can raise before the snows come again. And one flies to Casterly Rock, where a surviving cousin of the Lannisters, a woman with green eyes and a longer memory than her gold, begins composing a letter of her own. The realm does not break in battles, it breaks in ravens. And every rookery in Westeros is suddenly very busy. Sansa feels the shift before the letters reach her. She stands on the battlements of Winterfell and watches the first true snow of autumn fall, and she knows with the cold certainty her father taught her that the peace Bran bought with his silence is ending. She summons the Lords of the North. She does not send a raven to her brother. Jon is a sword already drawn, and she will not be the hand that aims him. She will be the hand that catches him when he falls, because he will fall. She has known that since the day he rode north with the wildlings. Starks do not survive the games of dragons. They only learn, each generation, to die a little better than the last. On Dragonstone, the duel is not immediate. Daemon is not a fool, whatever the songs say. He watches Jon for 3 days. He dines with him. He asks him about Ygritte, and Jon's hand tightens on his cup. And Daemon smiles because he has found the wound. He asks him about Daenerys, and Jon does not answer, and Daemon smiles wider because silence is a wound too. On the 4th day, Daemon walks Jon to the cliff where Aegon once watched his dragon's wheel, and he says, very quietly, "I know who your father was. I know who your mother was. I know the name she gave you before Ned Stark drowned it in snow, and I am here to take what she could not keep. Kneel, nephew of my line, and I will let you live as my sworn sword. Refuse, and I will bury you in the sea your Stark aunt was too proud to sail." Jon looks at him for a long moment. Then Jon says, "I have knelt to one Targaryen already. I will not do it twice." And Daemon, still smiling, draws Dark Sister. The fight is not a song. Songs lie. The fight is ugly and close and breathless. Daemon is faster and older and has killed in every style a man can kill. But Jon has died once, and men who have died once do not flinch the way living men do. Longclaw and Dark Sister, 2 blades of Valyrian steel that were never meant to meet, ring across the stones of Dragonstone like bells at a wrong funeral. Daemon cuts Jon along the ribs. Jon cuts Jon along the ribs. Jon cuts Daemon across the thigh. They circle. They breathe. The wind off the sea tastes of salt and iron. And then Daemon does what Daemon always does. He cheats. He feints high, and as Jon raises to parry, Daemon drives a dagger he had hidden in his left sleeve up toward Jon's heart. Ghost, chained in the yard below, howls. Jon twists. The dagger takes him in the shoulder instead of the chest. And Jon, in that twist, drives Longclaw's point up under Daemon's jaw and out the back of his silver skull. The rogue prince falls. He does not speak. He does not curse. He only looks, for one long instant, genuinely surprised, as though the gods had broken a promise he thought they had made him. Then he is a corpse, and the wind takes his hair, and Jon Snow stands on the painted table, bleeding from 3 wounds and realizing far too late that killing a dead man does not end the thing that sent him, because something sent him. Bran pulled, something pushed back, and whatever pushed is still pushing. In King's Landing, Tyrion receives the raven and, for the first time in years, does not reach for his wine. He reaches for a map. A Targaryen dead by Stark steel will be read in the Reach as a murder, in Dorne as an opportunity, in the Vale as a betrayal. The boy thought he was ending a war. He has started 4. Tyrion sends for Davos. They argue through the night. In the end, Tyrion does what Tyrion does. He writes a letter to Sansa Stark, because Sansa is the only monarch in this mess who has ever learned from her losses. The letter says only, "He is yours now. Keep him alive if you can." Sansa reads it at dawn. She does not weep. She has buried that girl. She summons her maester and dictates 26 letters in a voice so level the ink itself seems afraid. To the Mormonts, raise the banners. To the Umbers, forgive nothing and remember everything. To the Mandalis, open the White Harbor to no Southron ship that does not fly the direwolf. To the Night's Watch, hold the wall, for the thing beyond it is stirring again. That last letter she writes twice, and burns one copy, because she is not yet ready to believe what the old women in the kitchens have been whispering. Dead men, they say, have been seen walking on the Frostfangs. Not blue-eyed, not the others, only dead, only hungry, because this is the price Bran paid and did not tell anyone. When he pulled Daemon through the crack in time, the crack did not close. Death leaks both ways now. In the crypts of Winterfell, the Stone Kings shift on their thrones. In the Barrow Fields, the grass grows wrong, and north of the wall, in a place where the Night King's ice once held the dead still, the ice has thawed, and what was bound is loose again. Not led this time, not commanded, only hungry. The singers will say later that the second long night did not have a king. That was what made it worse. Jon does not go home. The Reach has risen, Ormond Hightower marching under a banner that is not the Tyrell Rose but something older, a white tower on a field of grey, a sigil not flown since the Age of Heroes. He claims he marches to avenge the Targaryen prince slain by a northern bastard. Everyone knows he marches because the Hightowers have wanted a crown for 8,000 years. Dawn stirs. The veil splits down its spine, half for the little lord who declared for a corpse, half for the knights who remember what Targaryens did to their valley in the dance. King Bran says nothing. King Bran, some whisper, is no longer entirely in his body. Some whisper he never was. Tyrion rides north to meet Jon at the ruins of Moat Caerleon. He brings Bronn, who brings 100 sellswords, because sellswords are the only army that does not yet have an opinion on Targaryens. Tyrion finds Jon thinner, greyer, the wound in his shoulder not healing as wound should. They drink together. Tyrion pours. Jon does not touch his cup for a long time. Then Jon says, "I killed him, and it did not stop." Tyrion says, "It never does." That is the thing no one tells you about killing kings and princes. The crown rolls. Someone picks it up. Jon says, "I do not want it." Tyrion laughs, a broken little sound, and says, "That is precisely why they will put it on your head." Sansa meets them at Winterfell. She does not embrace her brother. She looks at him the way a mother looks at a son returned from a war she warned him against. She says, "You have bled the South into our snow, Jon. Now we hold it, or we drown in it." She has already done the work. The North is raised. The Vale's loyal half has pledged, through old Jon Royce's last living grandson, to ride with the wolves. The Riverlands, ruled now by a thin Tully boy who trembles when he speaks, have opened their roads. It is not enough to win a war. It is enough to survive the first battle. And the first battle, Sansa knows, will come before the moon turns. It comes at the Trident. The Trident is where Targaryens go to die, and where Starks go to learn that winning is not the same as living. Ormond Hightower's host, swelled by Reach Lords and the remnants of the Golden Company that crawled out of the ashes of the last war, meets the northern host and the loyal Vale Knights on the same bank where Robert's warhammer shattered the Dragon Prince. The battle is a butcher's work. Jon rides in the vanguard because Jon does not know how to ride anywhere else. He cuts down 3 knights and the Hedgeborn Lord before noon. He takes a second wound, this one in the side, and Ghost drags him from the field with teeth in his cloak. Sansa watches from the rear from the command tent, and she sends in the Umbers at the right moment and the Mormonts at the righter one. And by dusk, the Hightower banner is in the mud, and Ormond Hightower is kneeling. Sansa does not behead him. Sansa is not Cersei. She sends him back to Old Town with 2 fingers of his sword hand taken and a message for the Citadel. The North remembers. The North now also writes. But while the Trident runs red, the Wall runs colder. Tormund sends ravens no one in the south has time to read. The dead are coming, he writes, and there is no ice prince leading them, only the hunger of them, which is worse. Castle Black is undermanned. The Night's Watch is a jest, a punishment post for criminals and younger sons. They hold for 9 days. On the 10th, the wall itself, weakened in some places by the magic that died with the Night King, sags at the Shadow Tower. Not falls, sags. Enough. The dead come through in a trickle, not a flood, and a trickle of the dead is still more than the living can bury. Tormund falls back to the gift, burning every holdfast behind him. The smoke reaches Winterfell before the next raven does. Jon is still bedridden when Sansa tells him. He tries to rise. She puts a hand on his chest, gentle as a blade. Not yet, she says. Not you. I will not lose another brother to the North's hunger. Send Tormund men. Send him fire. Send him wildfire. If the alchemists still remember the making. Jon stares at her. You would burn the dead with the same fire that burned King's Landing. Sansa says, I would burn the world to keep what is left of my family breathing. That is the lesson Cersei taught me. I only learned it better. And Jon, who once argued with Daenerys about mercy on the road south, says nothing, because he has learned, at last, that there are fires you set and fires you only survive. The wildfire comes. Not much of it, for the guild is broken and the old recipes half lost. But enough. Tormund's men roll the green jars down the hill at Queen's Crown, and the dead burn in a color that does not exist in nature. The trickle is stemmed. The wall is shored with stone and prayer. The second long night, such as it was, ends not with a hero stroke, but with engineers and desperate men and a red woman from Us High who arrived with no name and stayed in no bed and vanished again once the ice set. Melisandre, some whisper. Her heir, others. Does it matter? The dark pulled back. Not forever, for now. And now the question that no maester wants to write in his chronicle. Who sits the Iron Throne? The answer is that there is no Iron Throne anymore. Drogon melted it, and Bran never had it rebuilt, and the court at King's Landing sits in a hall of plain, carved oak, which some call the Broken Throne and others, more honestly, call the Chair. Bran sits it less and less. One morning his attendants find him in his chamber, with his eyes gone entirely white and his mouth forming words in a tongue that predates the first men. They do not tell the realm. They tell Tyrion. Tyrion writes another letter. The letters are how the realm runs now. Ink is the new steel. The Great Council is called at Harrenhal because Harrenhal is where great councils are always called, and because Harrenhal is cursed, and cursing a thing in advance saves disappointment. The lords come. The Reach comes in mourning. Dawn comes in silks and knives. The Vale comes split and seats itself on 2 sides of the hall and does not look across. The North comes last, and the North comes armed, and no one objects. Sansa walks in wearing grey and white, and Jon walks in behind her, pale as milk. And Tyrion walks in between them, because Tyrion has learned to walk between wolves. Bran is not there. Bran, the attendants say, is communing. Tyrion does not translate what he suspects communing now means. The council debates for 11 days. The Hightowers propose a Hightower king. The Dornish propose a Martell queen. Though the Martell they propose is half a sand and entirely a schemer. A Valyrian cousin, discovered in Braavos, is produced like a card from a sleeve and produces in turn a marriage claim through a line no one can verify. And then, on the 11th night, Sansa Stark rises. She does not ask for the chair. She asks for something worse. She asks for the end of the chair. Let each kingdom keep its own crown, she says. Let the North be the North again, as it was before Aegon. Let Dawn be Dawn, as it nearly always was. Let the Reach, and the Westerlands, and the Stormlands, and the Vale, and the Riverlands choose their own. Let King's Landing rule only King's Landing, and let whoever wants that Carrion city have it. The hall erupts. Half the lords scream treason, half scream since. Tyrion, who has lived long enough to know which half wins in the end, stands and seconds her, and that is the moment the 7 kingdoms, already 6 in their hearts, become 6 in their laws. Jon does not take a crown. Jon refuses, twice, and on the third asking, he leaves the hall and does not return. He goes north, past the wall, past the gift, past the places where the dead still occasionally stir but no longer march. He takes Ghost. He takes Longclaw. He takes nothing else. Tormund finds him one spring. They speak of a girl with red hair who died in his arms, and of a queen with silver hair who died at his hand. And Jon, for the first time since the duel on Dragonstone, weeps. Not for them, for himself, for the boy who left Winterfell thinking honor was a shield and who learned, one corpse at a time, that honor is only a blade, and blades cut the hand that holds them. In Winterfell, Sansa rules. She does not marry. She takes a cousin from the Karstarks as her named heir, and raises the girl on the history her father never taught her, the one where Ned Stark died because he believed a queen would honor a bargain. The girl grows clever. The girl grows cold. Some say, when the girl comes of age, that she is more Cersei than Sansa. And Sansa hears this, and only smiles because Sansa knows what it cost her to be half a Cersei. And she knows a whole one would not have survived what she survived. The North remembers, the old words say. What the North remembers now is that mercy, untempered, gets your father's head on a spike. Tyrion becomes of all things a maester. Not fully. The Citadel will not have him and he would not have them. But he takes the grey unofficially, and he writes the true history of the War of the Silver Prince, as the singers come to call it. He writes of Jon's duel on the cliff, and Sansa's 26 letters, and the green fire at Queen's Crown, and Bran's white eyes. He writes of the crack in time that no one closed, and he writes what he suspects about who pushed Daemon through it. And he seals that last chapter with his own blood, and hides it in a place only Bronn knows, and Bronn who has outlived every lord he swore to. Fass and takes the secret to a grave no one will find, and somewhere, in a cave beneath a weirwood whose leaves have gone black and no longer red, Bran Stark sits with his eyes open and his body still, and he is not alone. The thing that came through with Daemon did not leave. It sits beside Bran, patient as stone, and it waits. It has waited longer than men. It can wait longer still. Bran cannot warn anyone, for Bran is no longer entirely Bran. But sometimes in the dreams of a bastard living alone beyond the wall, a three-eyed raven flutters against a barred window, and the raven has white eyes, and the raven opens its beak and does not call but whispers. One word again, and again the word that means run. Jon does not run. He lives out his years in a small stone hut where the frost fangs meet the haunted forest, and he teaches wildling children the use of a short sword, and he buries Ghost one hard winter, and does not take another companion. On the last night of his life, an old man with a beard the color of river ice, he steps outside to watch the stars, and the stars are wrong. He knows they are wrong. He has always known. He goes back inside. He sits by his fire. He closes his eyes. He does not open them again. In the morning, the wildling children find him, and they burn him as he asked on a pyre of weirwood and pine, and the smoke goes up into a sky that for one strange moment seems to have no stars at all. Sansa, hearing the news a moon later, does not weep in public. She walks alone into the crypts beneath Winterfell. She lights a candle for him, though he has no statue there because bastards do not get statues. She stands in the dark for a long time. Then she says very softly, "You were the best of us, Jon. You were the one Father would have been proud of. And you are the one the gods took first, because the gods are not blind. They are cruel, and cruelty chooses the worthy." She blows out the candle. She climbs the stairs. She rules for another 11 years. And when she dies, the North weeps, and the South, which always underestimated her, weeps harder, because the South finally understood too late that the Wolf Queen had been the only thing holding the broken realm in one piece, and the realm afterward does not quite fall. Tithe. It limps. 6 crowns instead of 1, each kingdom nursing its own wounds and its own ambitions, each king or queen or prince watching the others across the old borders. In Old Town, the Citadel grows quietly stronger, and a new archmaester, with a soft voice and stained fingers, begins collecting all the books that mention Daemon Targaryen's second death and burning them one by one. In Bravos, a faceless man accepts a coin from a buyer whose name is not written anywhere and sails west with a list of 6. In King's Landing, the chair sits empty, and pigeons nest in its carving, and children dare each other to touch it. And sometimes at night the guards swear they hear a man laughing, a man with a voice like a slow-drawn blade, and they tell themselves it is only the wind. It is only ever the wind. That is the story the singers will not sing, because the singers prefer endings with crowns and kisses, and this ending has neither. This is the story of the duel on Dragonstone, and the cracked brand Stark opened and could not close, and the sister who buried her brother twice, once in name and once in snow. This is the story of what might have been if Jon Snow had crossed steel with the rogue prince and lived to learn that living was the harsher verdict. The realm did not end. The realm only learned, as it always learns, that every throne is built of bones, and every piece is only the pause between the gravedigger's shifts. Winter came again. Winter always does. And somewhere beneath a black weirwood, a boy who was once a boy opens an eye that is no longer his and smiles and waits for the next thread to pull.